Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And I would like to take this opportunity to let you know that what you are about to see is an interview discussion that I had the great pleasure of having with Cole and Ericca from the Magic Lantern podcast. It's a great podcast, and I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. You can find information about it in the description box below. I had a really lovely time talking with Cole and Ericca and hearing their thoughts and comments about a number of different film-related topics. So I hope you enjoy the following interview conversation. You might notice that there are some technical issues, some minor technical issues. For example, sometimes the sound is a little bit crackly and there's some snaps or pops here and there. So I apologize sincerely for those technical hiccups. Also, the video and audio is not synced up as perfectly as it could be, and I apologize for that as well. I think we can attribute that to maybe Wi-Fi connectivity issues. Sometimes in this internet age, there is a little bit of a delay that can occur between a video and the corresponding audio. So I sincerely apologize for that, but I hope you can understand, and I hope that it doesn't take away from your enjoyment of this conversation, because it is a really great one. And Cole and Ericca were lovely guests, as they always are, and I had the great pleasure of meeting them face to face a couple years back, and we did speak about that a little bit in this upcoming conversation. So I'm very happy and proud to present the following interview conversation with Cole and Ericca from the Magic Lantern podcast. So, my dear friends, I hope you enjoy, and I will see you again very soon. Cheers. So, greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I am so thrilled today because we are joined by a couple very special guests, dear friends of mine, and please join me in welcoming Cole and Ericca, my dear friends. They have a great podcast. They are wonderful film enthusiasts, lovely people, and it's my great pleasure to be able to talk with them today and to hear a little bit about their film journeys. Cole and Ericca, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're
And
so delighted to see you.
greetings from Austin, where everything is frozen over right now.
Yeah, we've had a crazy ice storm, maybe snow coming. It's 25 degrees outside. I'm wearing a scarf inside the house.
Yeah, it's supposed to be down to 0 degrees. This is Fahrenheit by Thursday.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Craziness.
has it snowed yet, or is it going to snow?
We had some sleet. It's going to snow tomorrow, and conditions are going to be pretty impassable for a couple of days, I think. So there'll be a lot of staying at home and making a fire and watching a movie.
Yeah.
Or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well, yeah, please stay warm and stay safe. Yeah, in snowy Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Right. Wow. So it's but as you say, it'll you're gonna stay safe and hopefully watch a movie or two. So
Yes, definitely.
and that's the great thing, because one of the things that has brought us together is, of course, our mutual love of this thing which we call cinema. And so I would like, I guess, to start off the conversation and also to introduce you to people who may be meeting you for the first time. Let's start with your podcast, which I think is a good place to start. Could you tell us a little bit about what your podcast is called and what your podcast is about? Because it's a really great one.
Well, thank you for giving us the chance to maybe introduce some new folks. Please come on over and join us. It is called the Magic Lantern Podcast, and we cover the films we love and the things we love about them. And that is a wide ranging list of films, all sorts of genres, bringing the things that we love and want to talk about and want to share with everybody. Did I forget anything?
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. And we do it together.
Right.
And it's called the Magic Lantern, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And I guess we should say the way it generally works is we each alternate a selection. It will be one of Ericca's, then one of mine, and back and forth that way. Regular episodes come out every 2 weeks. So we cover about 26 or so movies a year. And then there are also special sort of survey episodes for Halloween, for when we go to the Noir City Film Festival. If there's something special, we'll do an extra long survey episode about those things.
And at the end of the year, we do an episode on the things that we found that we watched for the first time that we wanted to also share. So that's called our Ants in the Pants episode.
And could you give us some idea as to examples of the types of films that you have been talking about, say, in the recent episodes?
We kicked off the year with Celine and Julie Go Boating.
Mhm.
So wonderful French film, tail end of the French New Wave. And I've already forgotten what my episode was after that. Oh, Tony Erdmann.
Mhm.
So fantastic German film. I've really been trying to hit female directors this year. We have been in our February month with Killer of Sheep, and I've got Daughters of the Dust coming up. So we cover all sorts of different genres, all time periods.
Yeah, that's kind of an art housey type list, but we've also done Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're huge genre fans of all types. So you'll get sci-fi, you'll get art house, you'll get horror. We try to cover as many things that, as long as we're enthusiastic about it, that's the only brief we are trying to fill.
And the information about the podcast, The Magic Lantern, will be in the description box below. So I encourage anyone who is interested in cinema but has not yet experienced the greatness that is the Magic Lantern podcast, please check out the Magic Lantern podcast and to listen to these great episodes again from our dear friends Cole and Ericca. It's really, you are doing a marvelous job. I must ask you, so the Magic Lantern podcast, so what brought about the naming of this podcast?
I've always had a fondness for sort of archaic, obsolete devices. And it really, the image of the Magic Lantern in Fanny and Alexander, that is one of my favorite things in the whole world. It captures all that magic feeling that you have about projected images. And so it seemed like it was just a natural thing. I wanted it to be kind of old-fashioned and yet really capture that idea of the wonder that you feel when you see these projected images that we love so much.
Well said, and well named too. And so the Magic Lantern podcast, Cole and Ericca's wonderful show and podcast. So please check it out if you can. And of course, it's hosted by the two of you. And I think in that really nice description of your work, you have begun to show us a little bit about your cinema journeys, the two of you, and how you relate to each other, how you watch cinema together, how you talk about cinema together, and what films that maybe one of you likes or the other likes, and how you introduce these to each other, and then more discussions are made from that. So this is really, really excellent and exciting for me. And the first thing I suppose I'd like to ask is, how did you meet? What's the story behind when Ericca met Cole, when Cole met Ericca? Would you mind giving us a little bit of that story,
Sure.
if it's
You want to
okay?
tell?
Sure. Yes. And because film, I would say, brought us together, we met online, as many, many people do. And I saw Cole's profile first, and I thought, truly, I thought, I think he's looking directly at me somehow. So, but you can put that magical element aside, whether you believe that or not. But reading through his profile, he took the time to list extensively extensively the things that he likes, the films that he likes. And it was the first time I saw somebody, no offense, go beyond something like Star Wars, for example. And I thought, wow, that's a person who has seen the same films that I have. I would say, comparatively, I have a pretty extensive film knowledge and never had anybody to share that with. And it, for my entire life, has been basically my favorite thing to do. It's been this love that I've had forever. And so I thought, gosh, I better send him a note. And it worked out pretty well from there.
There we go. So, what were some of those films? Do you remember?
Oh,
What-
everything from Buster Keaton to Cassavetes. It was as she I think downplays it a little bit when she says extensive. I did too much. I wrote way too much.
Scroll, scroll, scroll.
Yeah, there were probably, for an OkCupid profile, it was 90% too much. I put maybe 50 to 100 things on that list.
Right. But exactly correct for somebody like me.
Right.
Oh, and so what does that mean then, as far as the types of films that you experience? In other words, I can imagine that there is probably a group of films that the both of you know and have seen maybe separately, and now that you're together, you're watching them together. But also, I can imagine that there are those films, say, that Ericca knows and is introducing to Cole for the first time, or maybe Cole knows and is introducing to Ericca for the first time, and or maybe there are films that you like more than he likes, etc. So could you let us in a little bit on how the two of you experience these films, and how you share new discoveries with each other, and how you talk about films that you disagree with? What are some of those examples of that sort of thing? This is really fascinating to me. Could you share with us a little bit about that, if that's okay?
Well, I know one of my most favorite things in the world is to share something with Cole that he has not seen, because of the two of us, that list for him is much, much smaller. So it feels like I've pulled off the greatest coup in the world. It's so much fun.
You did that with me with The Heiress. You had seen that and I
Yes.
hadn't seen it, and that film was amazing.
So it's always just lovely to do. And I think also why we work together is that we both come into any film with the spirit of, let's give it a chance, let's see. I don't go into something hoping that I'm not going to like it, that's for sure. So I want to have an open mind and try to get on the film's wavelength.
And I think, coming from the other side, the things primarily that I've introduced to her were probably more out there genre stuff, more grindhouse type titles. Giallo, I guess, is one thing you hadn't really delved into before we met.
Very true.
And so my stuff is kind of the sleazier end of things.
Yeah.
Often.
Love it.
As far as something that we disagree on, or I don't like as much as you, for instance, as far as episodes go, I think Groundhog Day might be the one that you like far more than I do.
Right. And we did have a unique experience with Tony Erdmann where you were ready to walk out in the first couple of minutes, which is not your normal attitude.
It's almost
whatsoever.
Never.
So I had to reassure you when normally you have to reassure me that things are going to be okay. Or
it was I'm glad I listened to you, because it turned out to be great.
Good. And there's some I think that there are some journeys that I'm not ready to go on with you sometimes.
Cannibal Holocaust.
Cannibal Holocaust, extreme French body horror, maybe.
Yeah.
Some things I not quite there yet.
Oh, that is interesting. I'm before I forget, let me say my I love Groundhog Day, and one of my favorite quotes is WrestleMania. But anyway, so
No, I've been so happy to see your wrestling impressions too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, this is really fascinating, because what this means is it's a kind of, how should I put it, a kind of natural and organic type of journey, as it were, that is going parallel, and it's also based on individual tastes, but still it's also based on a sense of openness and willingness to try new things, and the sense of discovery. And as you suggest, I think also very naturally, sometimes it might not work, but that's still okay, right? So
yeah, unfortunately, those instances are very rare.
this is do you think that it could be that maybe you look at a film, I mean, it might be a difficult question to answer, but how do you think your perspective on film has been affected by the two of you, each other? In other words, do you think that you might have a different perspective on a film that you've seen and you react to now, versus, say, if you had seen this film and you were separate? You know what I mean? If you had seen this film before you had met each other, and now that you are together, versus, say, if you had seen it prior, do you think that your perspective would have changed?
What do you think?
I'm trying to think of those.
Is that difficult question
No,
to answer?
it's a good question. I think for me, well, go ahead.
Oh, no.
I think for me, I don't know if it's a confluence of me just getting older and maybe maturing a little bit in terms of snobbishness, or I won't lower myself to Groundhog Day, just to go back to that example, for instance. And not that I feel that way about it, but I feel like I am more open to what you will suggest to me just based on our successful track record. You've shown me so many things that I'm not disappointed in any of them. Even the ones that might not click with me the way they click with you, there's one small thing maybe sometimes in that I find extremely valuable. So it doesn't have to be the whole film. It doesn't have to become a favorite for my entire life. But no matter what, I trust what you show me. So I'm more open, I think, to taking a chance on anything that you might suggest. So that's the biggest difference.
I think trust is the absolute key. I'll say, for example, going into more experimental films, which is not something that I had particularly ever explored, and helping me to apply that open-mindedness that I have in general into that.
Right,
and
like
just,
Tetsuo, for instance.
Just putting it within a new frame. And then I think also sometimes we give each other things to think about. When you're watching this, think about XYZ, that can kind of open up some avenues sometimes.
You had mentioned Tetsuo as an example, the Tsukamoto film.
Though I think I would have been into that.
Yeah, if you'd found
at any point. I was thinking more, say, of the Stan Brakhage.
Okay.
Brakhage end of the spectrum.
Okay.
For example. Yeah.
Interesting. So that means also then that this also is, of course, dependent on your own personal journeys up to this point, up to now, and the films that you may not have seen, or the films that you have seen, of course, along the way since your journey started, as it were. So I suppose then the next question would be for the two of you is, could you tell us a little bit, each of you, about your own cinema journeys, and what were some of those important events or milestone film moments or films that you saw growing up that were very influential upon you and that led you to become the film enthusiast that you are today? So what were some of those milestone moments?
I have so many that I don't even know where to start. It was
Yeah.
probably my dad introducing me to Laurel and Hardy and the Little Rascals on Saturday afternoon television, starting with shorts. I love those to this day. They'll always be some of my favorite things. Then W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers. I graduated from what I felt like, the Little Rascals, this kid stuff, and then W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers. That's really in my wheelhouse in terms of anarchic comedy from that time period. And then it just goes all the way up to, I think a real watershed moment for me was 1987, because that was the year I turned 17. And I don't know what the restrictions are like in Japan, but in the US at that time, it was no one under 17 without parent or guardian for rated R films. So that year was the year I could start going to everything I wanted on my own. And what an incredible year. It was Raising Arizona, Angel Heart. There's so many films that I love from that year, but specifically there were a couple that I took my friends to over and over and over again. I probably saw each of those in the theater 4 or 5 times. So that was a big moment for me when that opened up. That freedom of I can choose anything I want and go anytime. Although my parents were never really, they never censored what I watched. It was always a case of watch what you want and we'll talk about it afterwards if there's something that might be a little mature for you, but they never restricted what I watched.
And on the other hand, also from a parent, my mother is the film lover in the family. And so all of my knowledge up to a certain point came from her. And it was pretty extensive. My mom liked to watch everything, especially Golden Age Hollywood 30s and 40s. That's her absolute favorite. And Roy Rogers movies, which we don't need to talk about. But she was a big fan of that stuff. So we would always have that on.
Yeah.
A huge moment for me, and that's what we did for our first episode, was getting to see Rebecca on the big screen. That felt like a really big deal for me as a 10-year-old. Certainly nobody else I knew was doing anything like that. And she also went to the movies all the time. Therefore, I went to the movies all the time.
She even came to get you out of school for...
She came to get me out of school to go see Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan, which was not my choice. That's all my mom. So we went to every rated R movie just because she wanted to go see it. So I saw The Verdict when I was 7.
Yeah. My grandmother...
We didn't talk about it afterwards. We didn't really have a dialogue about it. It was just sort of, we did that.
My grandmother was the one that took me to see everything when I was young. My parents both worked, and so I stayed with my maternal grandmother all the time during the day, before and after school and all of that, and frequently during school.
Yeah. When
a situation like yours. But she took me to see, she loved Burt Reynolds. So we saw Smokey and the Bandit and Hooper and WW and the Dixie Dance Kings. It was great.
Who's in Choo Choo and the Philly Flash?
Choo Choo and the Philly Flash is Alan Arkin and Carol Burnett.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we saw that too.
Got it. Sure. Everything with Mac Davis in it.
Yeah. Cheaper to Keeper. We saw that. Hot Stuff with Jerry Reed. It was awesome.
Oh my goodness. This is amazing. This is absolutely amazing. I'm so floored here because yes, I can understand what you say about that turning 17. I was in the States at the time too when I turned 17, and so yes, I remember that was the time. I seem to recall it was for me at the time, I think, NC-17 films.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to be for whatever reason, that seemed to be a kind of a leap forward, as it were. I don't know, because you couldn't go see them in the theater. So what did I think, what was it, Crash or something? Yeah, Crash. It was David
Cronenberg, that's a big one,
which was NC-17, right, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
so,
and it should have been.
Yeah, but... yeah. What an interesting work that is. So, but
I love that movie.
And it's oh my goodness, there's so much to say about that one. But anyway, but this is really great because it's right. You came from these environments and these families and these backgrounds that really encouraged your film watching. And it became like these events, as it were, like these family events or things of that nature. And so this is really great. I mean, and I can you've mentioned a number of titles already, but what were some of those, say, like wow films that you saw during this time that stayed with you, that really that have stayed with you up to now? Like, what were some of those examples?
A very big deal for me as a 13-year-old was seeing Heathers, because it was the first time among this fairly staid movie-going experience that I saw something that I hadn't seen before. It really blew my mind at the time, and I thought, oh, there's this whole other world out there, and that very much stuck with me. And then in school, because I was studying French, getting to see French film, that was also a very, very big deal for me.
I think one thing that we haven't even brought up, but also contributed a ton to this, I am sort of right in that wheelhouse for the early adopter of video store culture.
Oh,
basically.
for
And
sure.
so
Definitely.
a lot of my discoveries came that way too. It wasn't just in the cinema. It was going and seeing all those covers and getting to choose whatever I want, and the beaded curtain where the adult titles were in the back, that whole thing.
I didn't even know that existed,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure it did at my video stores, but that could have just been a Virginia thing. But when I was 16 and I could drive, that was, and that would be 1991, which is a good time to get into video store culture.
Yeah. I think
a second wave of it.
Other big titles from that was discovering the American underground at that time. She's Gotta Have It, those early Jim Jarmusch films. Those are the things that stick with me, really discovering that time where, say, Smithereens would be another one, from 1980 to 85, basically. Finding out about those movies, maybe all the way to 87 even, let's say. But going back to the video store and being able to go back through the years and not having to rely just on what's on television or what's in the theater, those are some of the big titles. And that particular movement, that's when I felt like, okay, here's the thing for me. Same thing that you felt probably with Rebecca, things like that.
Yeah, I can totally get that, because it was as you described it. I'm so interested in your choice here of describing it as being like American underground. It's what we would, I think, later understand to be what was the phrase that was used? Independent art house cinema. And I think that was coined. Maybe, I don't think it was coined. Was it? It wasn't as used. Maybe the phrase independent cinema was used more around the Pulp Fiction days onwards.
I was gonna say, I think probably Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
That's just what I was going to suggest. Yeah.
That's kind of where that blew up.
Exactly. That's so that would be a few years before, and then it became, and then independent cinema became like itself almost the new mainstream, if that makes any sense. I don't know. And then it became a big deal to market films in the mainstream as being like Pulp Fiction or being something like, I remember that period. That was in the 90s. And then, but before then, you're right, there was this, and I think, it was a kind of American underground movement that was of films like She's Gotta Have It, or Jim Jarmusch, which I think now are very much, I mean, they're part of the film conversation, so it's interesting to remember that, and to remember that times were a little bit different back then versus as they are now, with the wide range of accessibility. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But I'm sorry, I'm going off track here. But anyway, so this you talk about for example, the video store age and the VHS era, and your discoveries with that. And now I think, like me as well, coming from that point and now gradually going through the various stages of physical media, for example, the VHS days to more maybe home purchases of VHS, although I do remember that VHS tapes were still very expensive to buy. If you wanted to buy them.
$90.
and you wouldn't be guaranteed, say, like the letterbox or anything. Letterbox was still a luxury back in the day, right? Yeah.
You'd get that big clamshell package of Legal Eagles for $59.99.
Saw it in the theater.
Legal Eagles. Does that have a Blu-ray release now? I don't know. I
I have
haven't.
no idea.
But
I know
couldn't tell
that Black Widow with Teresa Russell does.
And so, but this is the point, right? Because now we gradually have lived through these various stages, as it were, of degrees of, let's say, more and more accessibility, until now I would argue that we're in a kind of golden age when it comes to film accessibility. And that's not even to mention the types of things that are available to us now with streaming services and the like. But could you tell us a little bit about your cinema journey then, going through this age, going up to the point that you are now, and the types of film discoveries that you made along the way? So you came from where you were growing up, and then going forward, how were some of those film discoveries made? Now, maybe I can start with the example that Ericca, you raised, which was you started to discover, say, French cinema when you were studying French. So maybe what were some of the examples and the points of discovery along the way for you with that?
Before I get into that, I do have to quibble with you about accessibility when it comes to Cole Rolane. The constant refrain of our life is he tells me about this amazing film that I can't wait to watch. We're going to watch it tonight. And then, of course, it's the one thing that's not streaming, or it's the one thing you didn't buy this week, or whatever. So it's this constant hype.
I would say just as many times to balance that out, I've surprised you with something that you thought you would never, ever find.
That's incorrect. There's no balance. No. Anyway, so I think, and I believe that you would echo this. So after we get through that period of, we have this sort of world sitting in front of us that we can, okay, well, I'll pick that today. I'll pick that today. For me, it then became, I discovered that people make lists of, hey, if you like this, check out these 10 other things. And then I could go track those things down. So then it became finding that next, oh, I've been hearing about this. I've been hearing about this. This thing that I was either too young to see, or, you know, it's so far back, or it just came out, but I didn't have any opportunity to see it. So becoming that curated list person and tracking down all of these awesome things.
Your French cinema thing, did it come from that or more from curriculum when you were going to school?
I think it's the same thing. I started with, here's the curriculum that they're going to give us. So it's got to be the obvious stuff like Breathless, and then very specific academic things about, you know, Saint Vincent de Paul, and who cares about that, but whatever. Very old. But then things like The Grand Illusion. So after I get through that, I could start to discover, which then leads me to things like The Butcher, discovering those people that I like. That was also actually, though, a video store experience, just kind of flipping through. No, I got there from a list. Sorry. Yeah.
I think the list thing is probably a little crossover for both of us. That's how we discover a lot of things once we got to the internet age. But between, say, high school graduation and when the internet became much more widely available, which was, you know, at least 10 or 15 years, it was, so because I came from such a small town in Oklahoma, even when I moved to college, that was still a very small insular Oklahoma place. And so it was a matter of always having to have my ear to the ground to, it's the same thing I do now. I'm just constantly scouring for the next exciting thing. But back in those days, it was film societies at local universities or things like that. That's where I got to see, I had to travel 60 miles to see Sunset Boulevard on the big screen for the first time, because the other, to go to the University of Oklahoma Film Society about an hour away to see Sunset Boulevard for the first time, worth every bit of it. And so it was always looking for those avenues and outlets that were showing something other than the Cineplex. I remember my friend Rodney and I, he was the other person that had a VHS collection at the time. There was one art house theater in the whole state in Tulsa. And so that's where we got to see Train Spotting for the first time. So in that in between period, it was a lot of keeping my eyes open and ears open, and then traveling an hour plus to go see whatever it was that we'd found.
I got lucky with the not having to travel because, as odd as it seems, Boise, Idaho at the time, and still does, has a small film community, and we had great art house cinemas that we could go to, so I could see Trainspotting on the big screen by just walking down the street to it. So that was pretty fun.
This is really great because it's like you had your parallel journeys in different parts of the country, of course, but they were ongoing, and then of course now we have the two of you together. But this is and as you say, it could have been following, like going back to the French cinema. You said that part of it was, say, from a core curriculum, but then things started to go from there in terms of lists. When you mention lists, are these, for example, what are these examples of lists that you're referring to? Are these maybe best of lists or critics lists here and there? What were some of the lists that you were referring to?
I don't know about you, but I always gravitated to what the AV Club used to be. They used to have, to me, very, very good lists of the 13 best heist films from 1950 to 1980 or whatever. Something specific and that I felt like had good titles on it, as opposed to more popular critics best of that I could see any time. But these other things, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't know that there was this other Elliot Gould movie out there that I could go watch. So finding things like that.
I think, like a lot of people, I started so far back in my teens that lists like the AFI lists that are very good for neophytes in terms of if you really want an idea about the American canon, start here. But then I quickly moved to things like the Sight and Sound list,
Right.
the They Shoot Pictures, Don't They? Films you have to see. And I think for me, it became much more about seeking out the individual critical voices that I like and looking up their lists. For instance, Jonathan Rosenbaum's year-end top 10 lists. I will, sight unseen, purchase anything that he recommends because my tastes align with his. I've discovered over the years so much that I feel like there can't miss for me personally.
This is great. You speak, for example, of also like the AFI presentations. I know also, excuse me, around this time, maybe the AFI were beginning to make public their best lists, best films or something of that. And I remember there were even these TV shows, I think, where they would have the list. Now we're getting closer to number one here. What could it be? And we'd have these various people in the industry, let's say actors or directors or people who might be directly or maybe indirectly associated with the film, talk about the films. And of course, number one would be Citizen Kane, right?
Of course.
And so, and I remember, right, maybe my memory is incorrect. Like, it was like William Friedkin was talking about Citizen Kane. He was like, it's the Mount Everest of cinema or something like that. And I think you spoke about Burt Reynolds. I think Burt Reynolds too. I think I got this right. When he was talking about Citizen Kane. I hope I get, if I get this incorrect, please someone correct me, but it was like, I want to say it was Burt Reynolds talking about Citizen Kane and about how it was like, what was that what he said? It was like the news, because it was black and white and the news was in black and white or something like that. But in any event,
They did have cool genre ones. That's how I found Audition. So, worth watching because you can discover something you didn't know.
They're still doing it. In fact, I routinely get emails. I think I got one yesterday or the day before that the AFI, it's now virtual, but they're doing these greatest movies ever with these presenters. It's just on the web now instead of on television. It's going on literally as we speak.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's oops. Oh, sorry about
Thank you.
that.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's good to know, because as you say, right, I think they continued on with various genres, like romantic movies, comedy, and you also mentioned Audition. So I that's the Miike film, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that list is top 100 scares or something like that is what they call it.
So, I'm sure it costs them $5 to produce, and then people like me will just watch them over and over if you have a free weekend. And not to slag off something like Citizen Kane, because it is amazing, and there's also a great big world out there.
Yeah, and I have to ask too, Cole. You mentioned in your comments a while ago about going to see Sunset Boulevard in the theater, having to drive however many miles it was to get to see the screening. How was that? Do you remember that
Oh,
experience?
I remember everything about it. I remember every single thing about it. I remember walking in. I remember what the lobby looked like. I remember getting my popcorn. I remember what seat I was in relative to the screen.
Cool.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was in a little strip mall theater that you would have never given a second look at, and it was probably one of those things where the University of Oklahoma Film Society rented it out to do a special screening of the film, because their typical fare was just multiplex movies. And so I just happened to see it in the advertisement, and yeah, drove about 60 miles. But yeah, I remember every single thing about it. That opening shot with face down in the swimming pool, everything. Yeah, it's branded on my brain, as Guy Madden would say.
I had one of those too in Baltimore. This theater inside of what looked to be a row house, kind of. And that's where I got to see a double feature of King Kong and Dracula.
Awesome.
Super cool, just because I was scouring the paper for those sorts of things. And then when we moved here within a couple of years of each other. We got super lucky, and we could also walk to go see something amazing on the big screen. Like the Paramount does their summer film series, so you can see Citizen Kane on the big screen.
Yeah, if anyone is planning to travel to Austin or lives here and doesn't know about it, the Paramount Theater downtown, it's our old Depression era opera house. It's beautiful. Murals, opera boxes. It's like you would have gone to the movies in the 30s and 40s. It still exists, and every summer they do a summer classic series, including a week of 70 millimeter titles. They do themed weeks of all kinds. Yeah, if you're in Austin or coming to Austin and you want to go have a super fun experience once COVID's over, go to the Paramount Theater.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Because yes, as you also alluded to, we are living in very strange times. And with this pandemic stuff that's happening, it's affected a lot of things. Of course it has, right? Of course it has. And I mean, we're talking about movies, and one of the things that it has affected is the movie going experience. And so, but that I think makes it even more important and more significant that you bring up these really lovely memories that you shared about examples of the movie going experience that you had, the two of you. And like, what could you let us know also, what were some of those other really fantastic movie theater going experiences that the two of you have had?
Together or separately?
Either one.
Well, we had a together one not that long ago for your birthday, because your sister was so awesome to get one of those private screenings. So we got to see Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
On the big screen.
That was fun. All by ourselves.
Super fun. Just the two of us in the theater. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was great. I think for me, again, this was a Paramount Theater experience, maybe 12, 13 years ago. What really kicked off my current Cinemania, and this is a classic example, right up there with Citizen Kane, Casablanca. I went to see Casablanca, and it's another thing where I remember the seat I was sitting in, how everything felt. But for some reason, and I'd seen it before, this viewing just hit me so differently and made me realize, and what it really was, house lights went down, and it was that anticipation right before the screen lit up that I was not like I'd ever felt it before. And I thought, okay, from here on, everything's different, even though it was a title I'd seen a couple of times at home.
I am on the sort of opposite end of that. As I've gotten older, I do not enjoy going to the movies. I don't enjoy the movie going experience because of other people in the audience. If it could always just be you and I, or for example, when I saw Ernest Goes to Camp twice in the theater when I was a kid, I was the only one in the theater. If it could just be that, but I cannot stand the invasion of other people into my movie going experience because I get very into it. So I don't like the feeling of rage that comes over me the whole time, and it takes me out of the experience. I have a couple that are not quite like that. But...
Yeah, but then there's something like the time that we went to see Tarkovsky's Mirror, and it wouldn't have been the same. It affected you very deeply, and it wouldn't have been the same.
Weeping for uncontrollably for I couldn't stop. Yes, but then also remember we saw Titty Cut Follies at the same theater, and people behind us were laughing.
Yeah.
So that's not fun.
So you're rolling the dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing too, because the theater going experience, I would suggest maybe in Japan. I can't speak for all theaters and all theater goers, but I think in general, based on my own experience, it might be a little bit, how should I put it? There is an easier opportunity to focus on the film, even though you're in a theater with a crowd of people. Again, this is before pandemic days, of course, but everything was, tickets are always, how should I put it? There's assigned seating based on your ticket, and everyone is very quiet, and people rarely, we get laughter, but it's not that prevalent, I would say, maybe compared to my theater experiences in the United States. And there's never any talking, no kicking. They're not even people get upset if if there's the rapper noise. You can't even do that, because lest you get the looks from people next to you, that sort of thing. So
we get the person behind us who has brought in their nectarine in their grocery bag and proceeds to peel and eat that thing.
We do have one great advantage, though, in Austin, the home of the Alamo Drafthouse.
Okay.
Where if you talk, you get kicked out.
Incorrect.
If you report them.
I report them all the time, and nobody ever gets kicked out.
Oh. That's so. Oh my goodness!
Even substantial that they're talking about. It wasn't some magnificent shot, or they've encountered an idea that just blew their mind. It's someone turning to their wife or their husband and saying, "I like that car," or "Remember when you had a hat like that?" It's just a complete, most useless interruption that could be.
No, it's awful. It's terrible. And there's one theater that specializes in definitely a senior citizen crowd, and that's the worst. Because say you have an afternoon free, don't go, because the lady behind me, when we watch Evita, is going to say, "Wasn't she the president for a while?" and then go on with this incorrect history lesson.
I'm talking at the Paramount, but there is one caveat to the Paramount theater experience. I don't know. Have you seen John Sayles' Lone Star?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a big reveal.
The big twist.
Yeah.
The ushers at the Paramount Theater, who are elderly volunteers, when their ushering duties are done, once the movie starts, they come in and sit in those few back rows sometimes and watch the movie. And one of them came in 10 minutes before the big reveal and said in the most outdoor voice as loud as he could, "Oh, here's what's about to happen."
And when I watched Dirty Dancing there, somebody was booing in the back. What are you talking about? Anyway, I will say something controversial. I enjoy the home theater experience. Give me everything on streaming, or I will buy everything. I do not care. I want to just watch it on my own without a bunch of yahoos.
It's worth it for me to struggle through sometimes, because nothing is like the theatrical exhibition.
I agree with you, and I have not figured out how to get beyond my very true rage and my I can't control my heartbeat. You've seen me,
Oh,
some
I've
of the
seen it.
things that
Yeah.
I've done. I will get in fights with people.
There have been times that I thought I was going to have to go your bail.
So
Well, it means that you are obviously, of course, right? You are so tuned into trying to get the most out of your cinema viewing experience, and that's right. And that's why you pay the money to go in the first place, right? So that's
Right.
that's the whole process. And it's interesting too, because there is this thing, that's for sure, about the movie going experience and about the what's known as, what is it, the film goer participation or audience participation element, that I think makes some films, and maybe arguably elevates them to a whole new, like transcendentally so, to this whole new level. I think very famously something like Rocky Horror Picture Show comes to mind. But I think there's this interesting way, like I remember when I was young, for example, the film Secrets and Lies came out in the theaters, the Mike Leigh film. And I adore that film. And I saw that film so many times in the theater. And there were many things I didn't understand at the time, but even so, it was something very emotional about it. And then I remember one screening or one theater experience that I went to with that film. There was it wasn't a packed audience, but for whatever reason, I think I went with my mother, and then near us there were some maybe some I would say maybe they could have been in their 40s or 50s, perhaps, two women that were there, and they were watching the film. And I remember one of them was so into that she was singing along to the hymns as they were being shown on. There's some parts where there's some hymn singing, and she was singing along to it. And I remember at the time I was so irritated by this hymn singing. I was thinking to myself, please stop singing. I want to watch the movie. But now that I think back on it, I think, well, this is actually a kind of charming thing, because it was like, there's something about, I don't know, or there's something about like the film watching experience, I don't know, where you see something of other people that I would never otherwise see, or I don't know these people, but I'm seeing something that they would probably not share with strangers necessarily. I mean, it's not anything like naughty or anything illicit. It's these personal moments, and that they share them. And I think, oh, that's, now to think back, no, that's kind of charming, in an interesting. And she was getting into the film from that vantage point. Of course, it was much different from how I was approaching it, but I guess it depends on the film and what you want to get out of it when you get that ticket, I suppose. And depending on that and how much concentration that you feel you need to have, if that's being distracted with, yes, I can understand it can be quite frustrating indeed. Yeah.
I think, though, you're exactly right. There's an entire spectrum of proper, quote unquote, proper responses. For example, if we went to see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, I wouldn't expect everyone to be sitting there reverently paying rapt attention.
Yeah.
It could be a little rowdy, and you can pick up on that positive energy from everyone and really have a good time. So yeah, for every film, a different experience, I guess.
Because I did get very upset when I went to a screening of The Sound of Music, and they made a point to say this is not a sing-along, which, why? It should always be a sing-along. And it was for kids too. I mean, why would you want to control that?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah. Yes. But in Secrets and Lies or in Schindler's List, you don't need people yapping behind you about what they're going to have for dinner.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It depends on the subject matter and the kind of maybe expectation or the sorts of situations that we understand the film is generally about or going to touch upon. Yeah, that's a very good point and a good distinction. But then on the opposite end, of course, as you say, there are those experiences in terms of, well, we spoke, I guess, about the movie theater experience, but then Ericca, you also brought up something which I don't think is that controversial at all, really, which is the great quality, especially with the advancing technologies and the like, of the home media experience, let's put it that way. So the television set or projector, whatever the case may be, and the particular machine apparatus, and the quality of the picture is something that is advancing, as we know, and the like. And so this is I think also a very uh, integral component in film consumption now, and it's probably going to stay this way for a while now. And that's not to say anything against cinemas and movie theaters, because I enjoy the movie theater experience immensely, but there is something about accessibility and maybe I mean, some Blu-rays I know cost more than others, but there's also a certain issue as far as in terms of price and some things being maybe cheaper to watch in this format rather than going to the theater, etc. So I get all that. So based on all this, it becomes, I think, its own a way of viewing cinema that is, I think, not in any way taking anything away from the movie theater experience, but it becomes, I think, a viable alternative. Let's put it that way. That's becoming more and more high tech as we go on in the years, with more video or more titles being more accessible, whether it be on a Blu-ray label or now with streaming, as you suggested a while back. So, but it does have its issues as well, right? And so, in terms of accessibility, what's OOP, what's streaming, what's not streaming, et cetera, and that becomes a whole new separate field of examination and question. So, it becomes endless, right? The cinema journey becomes absolutely endless when you think
I
about
was
it.
delighted that we could watch Bill and Ted Face the Music on the day that it was released. So no downside as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
How was that, by the way? I haven't seen it.
It's great. It's fantastic. It was super fun.
I think it was the vibe that everybody really needed at that moment that it came out. That it was really kind-hearted and pure and gentle, and there was a lot of love in it. You
Yeah.
felt both on the textual level and in the metatextual level of all of those people coming back together to work together again.
Yes, it was great. I think that's your positive spin on the experience,
Oh, I
which
had a
is
good
a
time.
good one. Okay. I guess it's one of those I liked it more than
Right.
you did, probably. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so Cole maybe had a positive reaction, and then Ericca had an even stronger positive reaction towards that film.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Yeah. And
Where I would say it was maybe a 6.5, you would say maybe an 8. Is that kind of where we are?
I'm gonna go 12 on that. I was just so in the mood for it.
Mhm.
It just made me so happy. Yeah.
Do you think it would be different if you watched it now?
Speaking of your earlier question of the times in which and the formats in which you see things, we often talk about film festival experiences sometimes being a very heightened
Yeah, definitely.
state where the audience can really push something into the stratosphere that it might not if you were just sitting at home watching it. I was ready for that movie. I was excited for it. I was waiting for it, and you got it for us. And yes,
Yeah,
just good stuff.
Oh, so this is right, and sometimes it's something that we need to watch given our mood and the circumstances at that given point in time. That's absolutely right. And that also, for me, it leads to the question of where do you see your film watching habits fall now? Do you find yourself watching, say, a lot of new films, or do you find yourself watching a lot of films that you've seen before? What's the breakdown or ratio that you would say between rewatches and new watches?
I think you rewatch more than I do.
I definitely do.
Hmm.
Very, very easy to say.
Yeah.
For sure. And you're constantly collecting new titles and a lot
Yeah.
and regularly. So we always have something new for both of us.
Right.
Not necessarily a new title, but Tammy and the T-Rex with the
Right.
Vinegar Syndrome release.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of I would say maybe, I guess it's sort of split for me, maybe half and half.
My rewatches
Maybe?
occur most often when we're going back to do something for the show. It's something I've seen before and I want to focus on and let everyone else know about. And so I'll go back and rewatch it. But for the most part, I would say 90% I'm watching new titles. And
Okay.
to clarify what you're saying, not current releases, but catalog titles I've never seen before.
And I got HBO Max for us. And so for the first time, I am now watching new titles, but as in just released, whereas that wasn't something I had typically done before or had access to even. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, if I'm going to see something in the year of its release, that may be 10 to 12 films a year. It's a very small amount of stuff that I'm going to see, and usually it's an Austin Film Society title. And I want to give a shout out to them because that is the gold standard for film programs in Austin, Texas. The Austin Film Society and the work they do, they show everything under the sun. They curate everything so well. They're so interactive. They're so enthusiastic. So if I'm seeing something new, it's likely through them.
Then we can see Valley Girl and Birds of Passage in the same week.
Right.
So, pretty great.
Oh, so this is really wonderful. Yeah, the importance of the film festival experience to discover new things in combination or in concert with the the need to watch things that you've seen before and the rewatch experience. May I ask you, based on that, have there been any experiences of, say, you rewatching a film and you really liked it now versus when you first saw it? Maybe you saw it for the first time, it was okay, or I didn't like it, and then you saw it again and it was, wow, this was, it clicked this time. And an opposite example as well, something that you saw was really great when you first saw it, and then you saw it again, it was something. What were some of those examples?
They typically don't go down in my estimation. If I am really affected by something, it tends to stay there. So I don't have a lot of examples of I was really knocked out by it and then I kind of cooled on it a little bit. There will be things that probably, it happens most with things that there are several years in between viewings, maybe 10, 20 years in some cases, where I saw something that I just wasn't ready for. It wasn't a matter of not being in the right mindset. I just hadn't accumulated enough cinema knowledge to get it back then. And everything I've seen between now and then, that's what helps me deal with it from a more informed viewpoint. And so that will be better. And that will probably be a lot of like tentpole classic stuff, some Bergman titles, some Fellini titles. I first saw them when I was 18 or 19, and I didn't have enough life experience to get it. And so it'll be something like that I come back to. Now I see what they're saying. Because when you're 17 or 18, Amarcord isn't going to speak as much to you as when you're 40. So that'd be a big one. That title in particular. I love Amarcord, but I saw it first way back when, and then I saw it 10 or 15 years later, and it just blew me away.
I'm trying to think of one, and I'm just not coming up with it. Whether I hang on to things and not trying to say that the thing that I loved when I was 6 has to be the thing that I love now. But
you still as excited about Mike's murder? Dead of Winter?
Still haven't seen it. Dead of Winter I only saw a few years ago for the first time, and it is good. And you're going to like it a lot when we finally get a chance to see it. I was thinking more about something like 9 to 5. 9 to 5 is great, and I can't imagine it ever not being great.
Okay, well,
I don't
maybe
know.
you don't have any then.
There's got to be something. Well, I haven't revisited things like Sex Lives and Videotape, for example.
Apartment Zero?
That could be one. I probably will like that more than I liked it back then. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it also goes towards the type of what did you say earlier, which is you're trying to come at these films with as much of an open mind as possible. So maybe that has to do a lot with maybe trying to answer the question now. But the answer or the example that you raised, Cole, about Amarcord, I think was really interesting, because I would have thought, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, I would have thought that it could operate as a type of film that is it's kind of like it has a lot of youthful vigor to it, because of the focus on the kids' stories and then growing up. Of course, looking back, there's a type of nostalgia lens that's applied to it, and we also know Fellini's story more or less that becomes part of the wider dialogue. But the sort of scenarios there also feel like things that I think one could latch onto, let's say in one's younger days, so to speak.
Right.
But you said, but the opposite was true for you, which is really interesting.
Right. I think that may be the case. That again, when I was 17, 18, I was so focused on, I so wanted to be ahead of where I was. I wanted to take on more adult ideas. I had little interest at the time in what was being marketed to me. And so, say for example, you're talking about, if you could view Amarcord as that era or generation's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or Risky Business, that sort of teen sex farce kind of thing. Although Fast Times, I think, has more to it than that. Yeah, it definitely could work on that level. And then when you revisit it years later, it could have a completely different thing. It could be both at the same time.
And so that's interesting. So then, as you say, at maybe around this time in your life, you, as you say, were looking for maybe things of, let's say, of a quote unquote heavier subject matter, or something that maybe had different kinds of concerns or perspectives. And then now that you look on it, the film later, you have, say, a different perspective on the film, which leads you to looking at it from a different point of view, or looking at it in a different way.
I think something that we both like that exists that way, Valley Girl, is very much like that. I think it's a great example of a really good teen film. And also, when you come back to it years later, there are other things going on that make it even better when you watch it the next time.
And something we talked about sort of recently with things that we've rewatched, I find that the older I get, I start paying attention to other people. For example, in Killer of Sheep.
You mean different performers?
Different performers. Okay. So I'm suddenly now watching the wife character and trying to, with the experience that I have in the years that have come since the 70s, I'm trying to provide just more context and a contextual layer to those emotions that I would not have gotten when I was much younger. Or the verdict that I mentioned earlier, jokingly, but when I was little, trying to understand people's motivations. So trying to understand Charlotte Rampling, and then looking back on her as an adult and feeling this huge weight of sadness that certainly wouldn't have occurred to me.
There was definitely an air of pretension to what I was doing in that late 80s period. It was very much a thing of, it was that, discovering punk rock and all that. It was the end of the Reagan era. So it was, you keep your Top Gun, give me this David Lynch. It was that sort of thing, both because it was what was more on my wavelength, and also I guarantee I was being an angsty teen at the time. So
no, but that's part of the life experience, right? And it's completely natural, and I can totally sympathize with that. And also it leads to great things, because as you say, it propels you to want to discover things that may not necessarily be within your immediate purview, and so there's all this great benefit to that, and it leads you to down these different avenues, and then you always come back, and then you realize, oh yeah, I do want my Top Gun, right, or something like that. So that's or do you still want your Top Gun? I don't know, maybe I'm
I do not.
Okay.
Are
all
you
right.
sure? Because the new one's going to come out at some point.
No,
Did you see the trailer for it?
Yeah, I did. It doesn't click with me. The original doesn't click with me. I see the worst of American culture at the time when I watched that movie, and I still don't want any part of it. Basically,
it sounds like you're writing checks with your mouth that your butt can't cash, or whatever that line is. That was the first time I ever heard that.
Or the one that what is it? I feel the need.
The need for speed.
The need for. I love the space between them. I feel the need. Yeah. The need for speed. I love that.
Yeah. And then a high five.
Yes,
but
I love that. That's great.
More than that.
Oh yeah, on the downside too.
Oh, yes. Well, yes. Top Gun. That was one of the films too, where I was in the States too at the time, and I think it was, I don't know, one of these was like kids. I forget it. I want to say Nickelodeon or something, where they had this TV show film critic review thing aimed towards kids. And I remember Top Gun, it was one of the films that was out in theaters, I suppose, and they had that featured, and that scene came on with what's the name of that character? Tom, what was the name? Duck. What was his name? Duck.
Maverick and Goose.
And Goose.
Goose. Thank you. What did I said? Duck. Well, I said Goose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So,
Close enough.
Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Why
Goose.
it's
Goose. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Couldn't tell you. No idea.
I need to see that film again. But also, yeah. So you're right. There's going to be the sequel. So that hasn't been released yet, right?
No, it has not come out yet.
Okay. So
I'll go see it if we go to Japan to watch a film.
I'll go see it if you buy the ticket.
Sure. No problem.
I can see
Maybe it'll be on
Cole will be first in line, right?
Get you some jujubes.
Yeah. It'll be another one of those experiences where I can say, I know exactly what I was doing at the time. I know where I sat.
Yeah.
It was the worst day of my life.
I look forward to the Magic Lantern podcast episode on Top Gun 2. I'm being very sincere. I'm looking forward to this very much. So if you
reserve our judgment.
Yeah, I'll sit back and wait. I will not judge it having not seen it, but I definitely am leaning a certain way.
Right.
And so as I say, that'll be a great. I'm looking forward to this episode of the Magic Lantern very much. And you also mentioned too, right? And I want to mention this, which is that I had the great fortune of being able to meet the two of you face to face, before all this stuff happened in the world. Before all this stuff, you came to Japan, right?
Yes,
and
we spent together was one of my favorite days of my life. The trip and every other time. We had such a fun day.
It was great.
Oh, thank you very much. Please remind me to give you the thank you money later. Thank you for that nice comment. No. Thank you. No, that's very kind of you. Thank you. That means a lot. I had such a fun time, and just in case people don't know, so now we think it was right a couple of years ago. Time certainly flies, but you came to Japan, and we met up Shinjuku area in Tokyo, and I was we had some time together. I know you were busy, so I'm so grateful that you were able to take some of your time out of your busy schedule like that. And we went. I think we went and ate somewhere, and we visited some. We visited like a Blu-ray store or something, or a couple of them.
Or two. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
We got a couple of things. We got to see the Godzilla on top of the Toho cinemas.
Oh yeah.
Cole frightened a small child. And
Yeah, the Godzilla on the top of the Toho cinemas. For people that don't know, you can trigger it to roar.
Yeah.
And I think maybe its lights flash, maybe steam comes out of its mouth. But I did that while there was a very small child there looking up at it in awe, and I think we scared him to death.
Not we.
just me.
Just you. Just
Yeah, there's a little sensor or something that one can press, and it unleashes the roar mechanism, I suppose. So it's behind, it's in the neck, and then people in the front, some distance away, are where the head and mouth is. And so yes, the mouth, the sound, I think, is emitted from that end. So you push the button here, and the sound is emitted on the other end. Yeah. So
it's great.
Yeah,
so,
but yeah, we had wonderful meals. We got to go to that excellent cafe that we went to at the end of the day. We shopped for Blu-rays. It was a great day. We walked all over. Yeah.
Did we get Seagull Diner there because of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got Seagull Diner, and we got the flavor of green tea over rice. I think.
Yes. Yes. So the Ogigami film and the Ozu film. Yeah. That's a great. That's a great double feature. And I know that you spoke about Seagull Diner as well.
Yes, we did that on our Patreon as a bonus episode.
Because it was so wonderful. So much fun.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
And it's so kind of quirky and charming, and it's quiet, and it's also very emotional, and it doesn't succumb to any of those maybe genre expectations,
right?
With that type of film. Yeah,
right. It's not too melodramatic. It's not overwrought. It's just
not precious.
Right, exactly.
And hopefully we'll go to Helsinki sooner rather than later too.
Yeah, that's our next international trip. We're planning to go to Helsinki as soon as we can at the end of this year, crossing our fingers again. So maybe we'll see the diner.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes. The traveling is so important. And I think this whole experience has, I mean, I know it's affected everyone in traveling, of course, but I certainly have felt the need, and I really appreciate the value in traveling to different places, and hopefully it will pick up very soon. I hope, as I say, fingers crossed, that things find a swift resolution all over the world, but if and when traveling resumes, we must meet up again, either in Tokyo or in Austin.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would love to show you around Austin. There are so many things I think you would enjoy here.
I've been to Texas before, but I don't think I went to a movie theater when I was in Texas, which was a shame. So I have to go and fix that one of these days, or a movie, so I want to go see a movie or two or three or four or five.
Right.
Good idea.
With breakfast tacos in between.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what happens? Breakfast tacos?
Yeah, that breakfast tacos are very definitely an Austin thing.
Oh, so I assume that means exactly what the name implies, which is tacos for breakfast?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
With breakfast foods in them.
Yes,
with
but not
eggs.
necessarily.
Right, true. But eggs, potatoes, hash browns.
Oh.
Yeah.
Green chilies.
Okay, when you said breakfast foods, and I was thinking like cereal, like Rice Krispies or something like that. Okay, so it was like had like eggs, scrambled eggs or something, and wow. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And all the barbecue you could want if you are a carnivore. It's
And if you're not, there are a million other
yeah,
options
so
too.
many great places. It's really a food mecca. Austin is such a great food city.
Oh wow! I have to do this, and then this would be in between each film. I
Yeah,
suppose. I guess
exactly.
it wouldn't be
Yes.
breakfast tacos all the way through, right? It would be just in the morning, I suppose, right? I guess you can have breakfast tacos.
You can
Well,
do it anytime.
you gotta do breakfast tacos anytime. And if we go to the Alamo, you can eat there as well. So
That's
we'll
true.
watch a movie, have some food, and then we'll take a break to eat, and then we'll go eat somewhere, and then we'll go eat and watch a movie, and then we'll have a snack.
Oh, that sounds like bliss.
Yeah.
Really, I'd love to do that. Before we go further, I must ask you, and you had mentioned earlier about your movie going experiences, for example, and one of the films you had mentioned seeing was was Tarkovsky's Mirror, and so I must ask you because I think maybe Mirror will be a quite. I mean, we're both Criterion Collection sort of
Yeah, we're sitting in
enthusiasts.
our Criterion closet basically right now.
I can see it's beautiful and fantastic, and I think it's the maybe Tarkovsky and Mirror and Criterion will be something that we will talk about hopefully very very soon, in that Criterion discussion. But whatever the case may be, I must ask you with that very special film. So I think Ericca, you had mentioned how you were really emotionally affected by that screening. Could you go into a little bit about what it was about the screening or what it was about the film that affected you in that way?
Yeah, because I remember the moment, and it's a little hard to explain because I haven't quite tackled the pathology that led me to that point, but it was the mother and the look on her face when she realized what I'm not going to describe it well, but when she knew what was coming and she was going to do it anyway. And it was a secret for her, but a secret for us. And it was something about the way that shot was captured with a couple of moments before and then after, and something just broke inside of me. And I couldn't stop. And we were with people.
We actually had gone with friends, and we just basically had to say, "Look, we just have to go home."
I sort of stood apart for a while,
Yeah.
trying to get myself together, and I was just so overcome with, I guess, the impact of the performance and what I felt that she was doing and feeling. And then yeah, I said, I just can't stop. I can't stop doing this. So we gotta go.
Do you have what is your perspective or experience with the works of Tarkovsky?
All through Cole. Was Mirror the first one that I saw?
I think so. We were really lucky. Again, shout out to Austin Film Society,
That's how
because
we got
the
to see it.
screening that we went to where she saw that, it was part of a retrospective. So we, in that same month or so, we saw Stalker on the big screen, Mirror, The Sacrifice. It was amazing.
Did I watch The Sacrifice with you, or was that you on your own?
I think Stephen Smith and I went to see that together.
And then I watched Solaris on my own. Yeah. So I knew of the films, but when it was one of those holes I had with all of the other things that I've seen, that was just one of them. So luckily, you introduced me.
Yeah, that was a momentous occasion. That's I assume you feel a viewing you'll never forget.
Yeah, absolutely. I was. The world shifted somehow in that viewing.
The world shifted. This is incredible because, I've the film is remarkable, and I don't want to go into too much detail, I suppose, but the film is so remarkable, as you know, for so many reasons. But one of the things that really struck me when you were speaking and about this experience depicted about the mother. And so this is such a I think a very complex film, because it purports on the one hand to be, and I think very successfully, a kind of, what's the phrase, stream of conscious type of cinematic, what's the phrase, it's a cinematic manifestation of the stream of conscious type of subjective viewpoint, right? And it's this idea of drifting through things. It's almost like a cinematic manifestation of what memory actually is, right? It's like when we think about ourselves, we never think. It's not like it's like a POV. It's like the ultimate POV experience, right? On the one hand, which we understand in terms of how things glide from different places of geography and then points in time even, which is like the way that like memory works. I don't know, it's like when I think about things that have happened in my life, I don't think of it in terms of like scenes necessarily, but they just happen, and it's like watching mirror. It's like feeling that from that point of view on the one hand. But then when you speak, Ericca, about this experience, and we understand that this film is also about this mother figure, right? And we understand that it has this perspective, which arguably is from her point of view. It's almost like we're getting this idea of what the protagonist must be thinking, of what she must be feeling at the time, if we are to adhere to this idea of the totally subjective perspective that the film is adhering to. Therefore, it becomes this really grand statement about the possibility of empathy, the idea of understanding another person outside of ourselves, right? If we have this wholly subjective point of view, and in that we have this moment where we can really feel like, as viewers, we can understand what someone else is feeling, that is a very powerful statement. And that is, I think, something that might seem antithetical to the whole subjective viewpoint, because we're looking at it essentially, or we seem to be getting a sense from another vantage point. But still, it becomes even more powerful, because it's like, wow, how many times do we find these really powerful moments of empathy in cinema? I would argue maybe not so many. And so when they come along, I think they are very, very powerful. So that's really, really profound, I think.
And it certainly surprised me, because it's not as though her experience is my experience, nor do I want it to be.
Yeah.
So I could almost have understood it if it were, say, if I were in that position as well, or had planned to be or something. But it just something about her, I think specifically that actress. And I would be interested, though I'm honestly not rushing to watch it again because of that, but I would be curious to see, as we were talking about earlier, would I have the same reaction now? Or was that a moment in time? Don't know.
Well, it will hopefully your wish will be granted in terms of being able to see it soon. Again, I'm not sure if and when it'll happen, but hopefully, maybe Criterion will release it soon, I hope. But in any event, we'll have to keep we'll have to keep updated as to what those release announcements are going to be like. So, but hopefully that'll be very soon indeed. And in which case, I would love to hear your thoughts on that, and maybe continue this discussion about Mirror and other films. But so with that, we are, I can't believe it. It's almost, I mean, time flies. Time certainly flies. It certainly flew for me today. I'm so thrilled, and I want to say thank you so much, my dear friends Cole and Ericca, for taking the time today to share with us a little bit of your experiences and your perspectives. It's very, very enlightening. I want to thank you so much.
It's our absolute pleasure.
Yes.
I've been, because I love the channel. I love all the things you do. I miss talking to you. We had such a good time. I knew this was going to be such a good time.
Yes.
So anytime you want to do this, we are at your beck and call.
Oh, wow. Wow. My goodness. My goodness. Oh goodness. This is, oh, wow. Thank you. I'm very, very touched. And, of course, we will do this again. It was much too long since we spoke like this last time. In lieu of being able to meet face to face, and of course, hopefully we'll be able to do that soon, I hope. But before we are able to do that, let's do this virtually. And right, virtually is better than nothing at all, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But before we go, would you mind once again just sharing with us? Well, first of all, maybe before you go, I always like to ask people about what they might have to recommend to us as far as film recommendations or recommendations in general. So do you have any recommendations that you'd like to make to me or to any of us here just before we go? Something that you think we should have on our radars, as it were?
I have two things that I
great.
watched. I think these are two of my favorite watches this year so far, and they're kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum. I'm going to choose kind of a sleazy grindhouse title, and then something a little more respectable on the other side. But
Okay.
Cutthroats 9 was something that I just watched recently that I've been waiting and waiting to see, and I could just never find a decent copy of it anywhere. It never came through, for instance, when I was working at Half Price Books or Waterloo. So it wasn't easy to get my hands on. So I finally just broke down and streamed it, rented it. And it is late period spaghetti Western sort of, but it's a film similar to Ravenous, where the shell of it looks like a Western, but it's really kind of a thriller horror film. And it's about a group of convicts who escape essentially because their wagon crashes as they're being taken to a work camp, and all of the way the situation just devolves violently, and it's so nihilistic and dark, and it never relents. It's never one of those things where you get to the end and it's like, okay, and everything works out. It's nothing like that. So that was great. And then the other thing I watched that I loved recently was a newer Kino Lorber release on Blu-ray called Black Gravel. It's a German film noir, post-war, and again, very bleak, but it has such a great earthiness about it because the great majority of it takes place in a club that's also a brothel, that's also a boarding house. And so there's this very frank expression of sexuality with no judgment, but it's infused in every part of it. It's fascinating to see. So those two titles are the things I think that I've watched lately that I like the most.
Okay. One that I would recommend specifically to you, Cole Rolane, and to everyone else as well. We're working on it for our jack-o'-lantern list for Halloween, and it's called The Lodge, I believe from 2019, so it's still relatively new, and it's with Riley Keough, and it is all about not the twist that you understand is coming. You can kind of guess. It is about the consequences of a decision for multiple characters and what led them up to that point and the consequences that they're all reeling from and the emotional trauma and turmoil of those decisions. So I really liked it. It's perfect for this specific time that we're living through in Texas right now.
This should also be a clue to everyone that this is how much we are into Halloween, in that we are prepping for it in February.
I also have a jam-packed schedule, so I try to get it done in advance. But yeah.
It's never too early.
That's right.
To do this. You're what a great, it's right. It's by the time we are doing this conversation, I think Valentine's Day is right. It's upon us, right? Or for me, it's today. So there's no better place to start a Halloween film list than Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So well done. Well, thank you so much for this, my friends. This is great. Absolutely.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Thank you. And last thing too, please once again, tell us Magic Lantern. Tell us about it, and so people can check you out there. But once again, Magic Lantern podcast.
Yes, so that's our podcast, The Magic Lantern. You can find us at magiclanternpodcast.com or basically anywhere you get your podcast, just search for that name. And we talk about the films we love and the things we love about them. And we are the hosts.
And we cover so many things that I think there's something for everyone. You might not
Yes.
like every episode, but there's such a variety of what to us are some of the most important titles ever made that hopefully someone will find something they like in that list of episodes.
And
Plus a John Matuzak film thrown in there every once in a while. So, yes, there's something for everybody.
and without giving away too much of the secret recipe, could you let us in on what we might expect for future episodes, future upcoming episodes?
Actually, I have my list here. Every
Great.
year, every December, we sit down and plan the entire next year. So let me grab that real quick just to give you an idea of what's coming.
We leave room in case at some point maybe we're just not feeling the choice that we had set out for, but
L'Argent and A Room with a View are coming up. The Square, a great Australian neo-noir,
Yes.
is coming up. Diabolique. Let's see what My Brilliant Career. We have some Agnes Varda. We have the film that I think affects me the way Mirror affects you coming up this summer with The Last Picture Show.
aha.
That movie crushes me every time, probably second only to A Woman Under the Influence. So that's what's coming up in the next few months.
Rushmore I'm doing,
Mhm.
and that's a film that was a very big deal for me seeing it in the theater, plus a lot of other great things. And our Halloween choices are New England horror, so that should be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
Wow. Amazing. Let me end how I began, trying to echo the same level of excitement, right? And as in Groundhog Day, WrestleMania. Every day is WrestleMania. Fantastic. This is great. No, seriously. And so well done. I that's going to be so exciting. So for anyone who has yet to experience the Magic Lantern, please go to Magic Lantern. As I say, all the information will be in the description box below. Please check out the great discussions. Cole and Ericca, it's been a great pleasure. Let's do this again very soon. I'd really love that.
Sure,
Yes.
absolutely.
Anytime.
Hopefully in person too.
Virtual hugs in the meantime.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you. And so until then, my friends, we will talk very soon, and just take good care of yourselves and be well. So cheers. Thank you. All right. WrestleMania.